Most people believe they need $1 million to retire safely. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Only about 13% of Americans actually reach that number, which raises a strange question. If almost nobody gets there, why is everyone chasing it? For decades, $1 million has been treated like a finish line, the magic number. The amount that supposedly separates a secure retirement from a stressful one. It shows up everywhere. Financial articles, retirement calculators, advice from experts, even casual conversations between friends who suddenly realize they're not 20 anymore. But the more I started thinking about it, the more something didn't add up. Because when you listen to the way people talk about retirement, you'd think almost everyone is quietly sitting on seven figures. Your neighbor with the perfectly trimmed lawn, that quiet coworker who never seems to spend money on anything, or that friend from college who now describes their job as consulting, which could mean almost anything. But when I really stopped and thought about it, one question kept coming back to me. Who actually has $1 million saved for retirement? So I started digging into the numbers, and what I found was surprising, a little uncomfortable, and honestly pretty eye-opening. But before we get into that, welcome to the channel. If you enjoy exploring real-life financial questions like this and want practical ideas that can help you think differently about your future, consider subscribing and joining the community. Because the truth behind the $1 million retirement myth might completely change how you think about money. The more I looked into it, the more I realized something interesting. $1 million sounds enormous, but when you translate it into real life, it suddenly feels very different. Most financial planners rely on something called the 4% rule. The idea is simple. If you retire with a certain amount of savings, you withdraw around 4% each year, allowing the rest of the money to stay invested so it can hopefully last for decades. When you apply that rule to $1 million, the math comes out to about $40,000 per year before taxes. At first, that doesn't sound too bad, but then imagine actually living on it. Of course, most retirees also receive Social Security, which currently averages around $23,000 a year. Combine those two sources of income, and you end up with roughly $63,000 annually before taxes. That's not poverty. But it also isn't the glamorous picture many people imagine when they hear the phrase, retire with $1 million. Suddenly, the number feels less like wealth and more like stability. Once I understood what $1 million actually translates to in real life, another question naturally followed. How many people actually reach that number? So I started digging into the data, and the answer was surprisingly humbling. According to retirement account data from Vanguard, only about 3.8% of individual 401k accounts in the United States contain more than $1 million, less than 4 out of every 100 accounts. Even when you expand the picture and look at entire households, combining retirement accounts from both spouses, the number is still relatively small. Among Americans aged 55 to 64, roughly 13% of households have accumulated $1 million or more for retirement, which also means something that rarely gets said out loud. 87% of people approaching retirement have not reached that milestone. And strangely, when I saw that number, I didn't feel shocked. I felt reassured, because suddenly the quiet anxiety many people carry about being behind didn't feel quite so personal anymore. Who actually reaches 1 million? So naturally, the next question becomes, who are the people who actually do reach that number? The most obvious answer is high earners. Income still matters. Doctors, lawyers, corporate executives, and successful business owners often have much larger margins between what they earn and what they spend. If someone earns $200,000 a year or more, contributing large amounts to retirement accounts becomes far easier. But something interesting shows up when you look deeper. High income alone doesn't guarantee wealth. Many people earning six figures still feel financially stretched. Because as income rises, lifestyles often rise with it. Larger homes, newer cars, private schools, more expensive habits. What begins as success can quietly transform into obligation. Earning more money may open the door to wealth, but it doesn't automatically walk you through it. The more I explored the data, the more I noticed another pattern that had nothing to do with income. It had everything to do with time. One of the most powerful forces in personal finance isn't intelligence, connections, or even discipline. It's compound interest. Imagine investing $500 every month starting at age 25, earning an average return of about 7%. By age 55, that alone could grow to roughly $600,000. Increase the monthly contribution slightly, and suddenly you're approaching $1 million. What struck me most is this. Starting just 10 years earlier can dramatically change the outcome. Not because you saved more money, but because time did the heavy lifting. In many cases, wealth isn't built through dramatic financial moves. It's built quietly over the decades, and most people barely notice while they're happening. Another pattern also appears when economists study retirement wealth. Not every financial advantage shows up on a paycheck. Some advantages begin long before someone earns their first dollar. Inheritance, for example, plays a much larger role than many people realize. Economists estimate that over the next 2 decades, around $84 trillion will be transferred from older generations to their families. But inheritance doesn't always look like a sudden check in the mail. Sometimes it appears in smaller, quieter ways. Parents helping pay for college, a home passed down through generations, or simply the absence of overwhelming student loan debt. When someone begins adulthood without sending hundreds of dollars every month to lenders, they gain something incredibly valuable: breathing room. And over a lifetime, that breathing room can quietly turn into opportunity. And yet, some of the most fascinating stories about wealth don't involve high salaries or inheritance at all. They involve ordinary people. One famous example is a man named Ronald Reed. He spent most of his life working as a gas station attendant and later as a janitor in Vermont. Nothing about his career suggested extraordinary wealth. But when he passed away in 2014, people discovered something remarkable. He had quietly accumulated $8 million. No tech startup, no lottery ticket, no sudden windfall, just decades of patient investing. People like this rarely attract attention. They drive older cars, avoid unnecessary debt, and consistently invest part of their income year after year. Wealth, in many cases, isn't built through dramatic victories. Sometimes it's built through quiet consistency, repeated thousands of times over a lifetime. Another factor people rarely talk about is geography. The cost of living varies dramatically depending on where you live. Cities like Manhattan or San Francisco can cost nearly twice as much as places like Houston or Nashville. Over decades, that difference changes how much someone can save and invest. Add the advantage of 2 incomes in a household, both contributing to retirement plans, and the long-term math starts to look very different. After looking at all of these patterns, income, time, habits, family advantages, and even geography, I began to realize something important. Maybe the real goal was never exactly $1 million. Financial planners often suggest saving around 10 to 12 times your annual income by retirement. For someone earning $80,000 a year, that would mean somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million. But depending on where you live, whether your home is paid off and what kind of lifestyle you want, some people may live comfortably on less. Others may need more. Which means the real conversation isn't about hitting a specific number. It's about building enough stability that money stops being a constant source of stress. When researchers look at people who eventually reach financial security, the same habits appear again and again. Taking advantage of employer retirement matches, investing consistently in low-cost index funds, gradually increasing savings as income grows, avoiding high-interest debt that quietly erodes progress. None of these choices looks dramatic in the moment. But over 30 or 40 years, small decisions quietly shape an entirely different financial future. And after thinking about all of this, I keep coming back to one simple realization. Financial security rarely comes from one big moment or one perfect number. It comes from small decisions repeated consistently over many years. Saving a little earlier, investing steadily, living slightly below your means. None of those habits feels exciting in the moment, but over the decades, they can quietly transform your future. So maybe the real lesson isn't about chasing $1 million. It's about building a life where money gradually becomes less of a worry. Now I'm curious about your perspective. Do you personally think $1 million is enough to retire comfortably today? Or do you believe the real number is higher, or maybe even lower? Share your thoughts in the comments so everyone can learn from different perspectives. And if you enjoyed this kind of thoughtful financial storytelling, consider subscribing to the channel. Because the goal here isn't just to talk about money, it's to understand how the choices we make today quietly shape the lives we live tomorrow.